What if I told you that Alberta, one of Canada's richest provinces, is actually considering breaking away and becoming the 51st state of the United States? Sounds insane, right? But with Trump's tariffs hammering Alberta's economy and Ottawa turning a blind eye, this wild idea is gaining real traction. What happens next could change the map of North America forever. Stick around, this is one story you won't believe. Today, we're diving into the political drama that's shaking the very foundations of Canada. Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods, Alberta's frustrations with Ottawa, and a growing desire for self-determination might just be the perfect storm for Alberta to break away from Canada and join the United States. Alberta, known for its vast oil sands and natural resources, has always been a powerhouse in Canada. Yet, despite its immense wealth, the province has long felt neglected by the federal government. Alberta contributes billions to Canada's economy, but it often finds itself at odds with Ottawa's policies on energy, taxes, and the environment. But recently, the tension has reached a boiling point. The trigger: Donald Trump and his tariffs. Trump's aggressive trade war tactics, including tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and oil, are starting to hit Alberta hard. Many in the province are asking, why should we stay part of a country that refuses to protect our economic interests? The tariffs have increased costs and hurt the province's economy. But the question is, could this be the final straw? Could Alberta, once considered an essential part of Canada's political fabrics, a drastic change and become part of the United States? The stakes are high. Alberta's economy is heavily reliant on the energy sector, with Trump's tariffs threatening to choke off access to key American markets. The cost of doing business is rising, and jobs are at risk. For a province whose oil exports account for a large chunk of its GDP, the consequences of these tariffs could be devastating. To understand why this has become such a critical issue, let's look at the numbers. Alberta is home to the world's third-largest oil reserves. But instead of enjoying the full benefits of this wealth, Albertans have watched their industry struggle due to environmental restrictions, pipeline delays, and now Trump's punitive tariffs. In fact, many have voiced their frustrations. Why should we remain part of a country that allows foreign interests like the United States to dictate our economic future? So, the question arises, could Alberta be better off under U.S. statehood? It's not just political pundits who are talking about this. In fact, a recent poll found that over 30% of Albertans are now open to discussing the possibility of statehood. A third of the population is seriously contemplating whether their future lies with Canada or as part of the United States, while many still consider the idea far-fetched or even borderline treasonous. A growing number of influencers, former politicians, and business leaders are beginning to ask, could we thrive as part of the U.S.? Could Alberta finally get the economic security and political influence it deserves? Imagine the benefits. Fewer trade barriers, meaning smoother access to American markets, especially for Alberta's critical oil industry. The chance to capitalize on the U.S. energy sector's size and strength. Boosting oil exports without the constant political roadblocks. Ottawa puts in place tax incentives and potential federal support for Alberta's energy infrastructure that could supercharge growth and attract global investments. But it's a big but. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. While Alberta could gain significant economic advantages, it would also have to sacrifice some key things that are integral to Canadian identity. That includes universal health care, which remains one of Canada's proudest achievements. The higher taxes that fund essential social programs across the country. The national pride tied to being part of a nation with its own distinct identities, something Alberta would have to give up for good. And here's where it gets really interesting. Believe it or not, this idea isn't entirely new. The conversation about Alberta joining the U.S. or becoming independent has been brewing for years, though it was often dismissed as fantasy or extreme political rhetoric. But now, as tensions rise with Ottawa, this dream is becoming less of a fringe idea and more of a serious discussion, especially in light of the political and economic pressures piling on the province. In the early 1900s, there were talks about Alberta potentially joining the U.S. as part of a broader Western independence movement. The Red River Rebellion, a pivotal event in Canadian history that led to the formation of the Canadian Confederation, exposed a deep undercurrent of discontent in the Western Territories. It highlighted that the West, including Alberta, often felt like an afterthought to the Canadian government, which was heavily centered around the more populous regions of Ontario and Quebec. The idea of joining the United States wasn't just a passing fantasy, was seen by some as a means of escaping the political and economic dominance of the eastern provinces, and a way to have more control over their own resources and future. Even as the country grew and evolved, Alberta's desire for more autonomy never fully went away. In recent years, there have been isolated instances where people have once again discussed Alberta's future outside of Canada, whether it be through the idea of provincial independence or U.S. statehood. These conversations were often dismissed as fringe movements or the dreams of a few discontented individuals. Yet each time the topic surfaced, it carried with it a message of resentment, frustration, and a desire for change. But this time, things are different. With the rise of populist movements both in Canada and the U.S., the conversation about Alberta's place in the larger political landscape is gaining far more serious attention. The political climate has shifted dramatically in both countries. The status quo no longer feels stable or sustainable, and many Albertans are looking for alternatives to the centralized control that Ottawa has exercised over the years. In Alberta, frustration with the federal government has been building for decades. But now, it feels like there is a genuine opportunity for realignment for Alberta to take matters into its own hands. As political tensions increase and Alberta's economic challenges worsen, many are wondering, is this just another passing fad, or is this a turning point in the province's political trajectory? With economic pressures, political frustration, and external threats, more people are seriously asking, could Alberta have a better future as part of the United States? Now, let's talk about Trump's tariffs and how they've accelerated this conversation, pushing the idea of Alberta's independence from Canada further into the public spotlight. While many in Alberta were frustrated with Canada's inability to support the oil industry adequately, the Trump administration's tariff threats were like pouring gasoline on a fire. This wasn't just a diplomatic spat. This was about economic survival. Trump's stance on trade has always been aggressive, and it's something he's made clear time and again. In his own words, America First means putting the interests of U.S. workers and industries at the forefront, even if that comes at the expense of Canada. Under this mantra, Trump implemented a series of tariffs that have hit Canada, and especially Alberta, hard. But the reality of these tariffs has been even more destructive than anyone anticipated. Alberta's economy, which is heavily reliant on exports to the United States, especially oil, has felt the sting of these trade barriers in a way that few could have predicted. The impact on Alberta has been devastating. Jobs in key sectors like oil, lumber, and steel are disappearing at an alarming rate. Entire businesses that depend on cross-border trade are being forced to close or downsize, as they can no longer compete with the new economic restrictions. The oil industry, which has long been the backbone of Alberta's economy, has been especially hard hit, with the U.S. imposing tariffs on Canadian oil. Alberta's energy sector is now facing a future full of uncertainty and declining profits. The result? Thousands of workers have lost their jobs, and many businesses are struggling to stay afloat. This isn't just an economic challenge. It's a social crisis for many communities in Alberta that rely on the oil industry to survive. The impact of these tariffs is more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's a personal blow to Albertans, who have spent decades building a thriving energy sector that could now be undermined by trade policies. So, when Alberta's economic leaders and citizens start questioning whether it might be better off outside of Canada's economic framework, they're not just acting out of frustration, they're reacting to real, tangible harm to their livelihoods. This trade war with the U.S. has pushed Alberta's economy to a breaking point, and the province's residents are feeling more isolated than ever before, with no clear support from Ottawa to address the fallout. Problems. Let me know in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that like button if this issue is one that has you questioning the future of Canada's relationship with its provinces. We are living in a time of unprecedented political change. Alberta is fed up, and the political system in Canada needs to respond. Will this lead to the breakup of Canada, or will Alberta remain part of the country? It's a question that could reshape the future of North America. Don't forget to subscribe. For more stories like this conversation isn't over, and it's only just beginning.